So this is a very short video explaining why you should always add a blink when a character turns their head. And in this video I'm using the character 11 created by the 11-second club, and I've set my timeline from frame 1 to frame 25, which is to say 1 second, and it's a very, very simple blink, rather under-animated, or rather very, very simple head turn, but I'm just selecting something very, very simple in order to demonstrate the principle that the character needs to blink when they turn their head. Now the science behind this is that when we turn our head from one direction to another, we automatically blink, and we do it without even noticing it. And the reason we do it is in order to edit out all the extra data that is in between the 2 points we're looking at. We really don't need all of that information, so our brains automatically add a blink so that we don't have to process it. And we can simply go from one view, which is over here, to another view over there. And if you look at this head turn here, it feels weird because 11 is kind of looking all the way. His or her eyes are open during a transition period, which is really very unnatural because we just, generally speaking, don't do that. And it's one of the difficult things about learning animation. There's so much that we do with our bodies is automatic and done with our unconscious mind. And as animators, we need to study that and then add it consciously into our animation. So in this case, what we're going to do is add a blink so that we don't get this kind of zombie eye effect as the character looks from one direction to another. So let's go into the eye controls. That's these guys over here. So I'm going to shift select them both, and then I'm going to the blink slider here, and around the halfway point I'm going to set a keyframe and I'm going to add a blink so those eyes are closed. And let's just make sure that I'm not in stepped curves. For some reason my preferences are defaulting to stepped curves, even though I've asked them not to. I'm not entirely sure why it's doing that, but there are many mysteries in Maya, and particularly in Maya 2018. So let's take a look at what we've got now. So now 11 looks from one side to another, and there's a blink there. Now it's much too slow. We need to take some frames out. So I'm going to go back into those keyframes and adjust them. So let's go to blink, and let's have a look in the graph editor and see what we've got. So we probably want the eyes fully open at around, let's see if it's 13, let's try around frame 19. So I'm going to go to 25, middle mouse drag that back to 19 and press S, and then flatten that off there by using the flatten tangents button. And I'll probably do the same here. Let's middle mouse drag that to frame 5 or even frame 9 and press S. So we're going to go into the blink and then out of it slightly more slowly. So something like that. So that's starting to look better. So that's starting to make a little bit more sense. Now one thing we want to do is, as the head is turning, the eyeballs are turning with us. Now that's because the look direction controller, the look-see controller over here is set to head instead of world. So if I change that, then that should make more sense. So here, wait a minute, let me just middle mouse drag that to frame 1, press S, there we go. And now, no, we actually want, okay, let's move that over there. So let's say the character is looking over there. Let's middle mouse drag that to there and press S. We still want to be in spline curves though. And this isn't actually going to look quite right, is it? So let's try pulling that over a little bit. Like that. And then we get the blink, and then now we need to move that over here. So we need to move the look-see controller. And let's middle mouse drag that to frame 17. So we've moved the look-see controller. There we go. That's probably a little bit too far. Let's just pull that back a little bit. Something like that. Okay, so now we've got a blink that is starting to work. And you can see that 11 is, by blinking, he or she, it's a pretty androgynous rig, is editing out a lot of information as we go from one view, that's the screen left, the starting point, to the end view. Now, the other thing we need to bear in mind with a blink is that you need to include the brows in the blink. If you just blink with the eyes, with the eyelids themselves, it will feel stiff. So let's shift select the two brows and let's see. We can just, let's try, what about mid-brow? No. Okay, so we'll just take translate Y. So let's set a keyframe here, and here, and here, and there, and let's drop the brows down at frame 13. So what we're doing, actually let's just take a look at that curve to make sure we flatten off those tangents so we don't get any overshoots. So now we've got a little bit of motion in the brows as well as in the eyelids, and that will help give it flexibility and make sure that the whole face feels alive. Now there's still some things that I can do to refine this. The eyes in particular feel like they're wobbling a little bit at the start there, so I'd still need to adjust the look-see controller, and we could probably adjust the precise timing of the blink a little bit as well. For example, this frame here, we could close the eyes, keep them closed maybe for 1 or 2 frames longer, but I'm not going to get into the refinement of this. I just want to show you the principle that when a character turns their head, you should add a blink. And this is not an inflexible rule, because like all rules it can be broken, but by default you kind of want to do this. Actually, even looking at it now, I can see one thing we could do here is just bring the eyeball down a little bit, and we can do that with the look direction controller. So I bring it down, what it will do there is we'll kind of bring the eyeball down with the eyelid, and it'll give us a little more kind of subtlety. So here we can bring them down a little bit as well. So there you go. I said I wasn't going to add detail, and now I've started doing it. There's lots of little refinements you can add to these things to make them more attractive. We could offset the eyes as well so they both weren't opening and closing at the same time. But the main thing, as I say, is to establish the principle that when a character looks from one object to another, we blink. And that's the general rule that you always want to follow.